Greetings all, this is Nick from Those Hairy Gamers, back with Justin. How you doing, dude?
Awesome. 100% awesome.
Excellent, that's great to hear. I like it how you always have a different answer for me, that's quite nice. We're back to talk about Star Wars Legion because despite the fact we've had no more official word, you guys have been absolutely demanding it. The reveal video for the article they put out last Sunday just went ballistic. You guys absolutely love it.
Is it 16,000 views?
It's on 16,000 views for a channel that only has 30,000 views overall. That's pretty insane. So thanks for all the support, guys. We're going to cover this very thoroughly as best we can. I was going to wait for another reveal article before I did more of this, but because it's been so popular, I thought, nope, let's get it done all now. We're going to make sure all the information we know about Star Wars Legion is on this channel so you guys can follow it. So since the initial reveal article dropped, I've had a lot more information come in. That was here in Melbourne Saturday morning. And we had some demos of the game played on various websites. We had a lot of reveals and sort of leaked pictures from Gencon of all the different cards. We now know a lot more than I did when I made my last video. So we're going to go through all the details that we now know up to this point. First of all, I just want to thank all the people who went to Gencon and posted all this information, particularly General Games and Team Covenant. Thank you so much, guys. You guys have done a great job of giving us all the information, giving us a good rundown, so I'm basically just parroting all this information. If you want to check out those guys, please go right ahead. Those guys are awesome. They do a really good job of releasing all this information. But it seems like you guys really want to hear it from me as well, so I'm going to show you all this information that we know. First of all, let's run down everything we know what's going on with this card. So running down what we can see here on the card, let's go top left and just sort of read through it bit by bit. Top left-hand corner, we have the faction, then we have the name. These symbols over here refer to the rank and amount of minis in the unit. Yep. We have a nice picture of the unit right next to it. Just below the faction symbol, we have the points value. And in the center of the card, we have all the keywords and text that refer to how it moves and what kind of bonuses it gets.
Different abilities.
That's pretty much it. In the example of Luke Skywalker, he has Jump 1. Perform a move during which you ignore terrain that a height or one is lower. That is treated as a move action, so he can jump around like a maniac. He also has Charge. After you perform a move action, you may perform a free melee attack action. He's jumping and attacking, Justin.
I was just about to say, I hope that whenever they finally bring out a Yoda, that he has a jump of at least 17.
I don't think that's something we want, Justin, but...
17 jump!
No. He also has Deflect. While defending, if you spend a dodge token, you gain a Surge to Evade result. If it's a ranged attack, the attacker suffers 1 wound from each Surge result. Okay, so this is something I didn't know about when I made my last video. Basically, the ratio symbol here, as in a something to something, is saying this dice result gets freely converted. If you don't have these stats, any surge result just cancels out into a miss or no evade or whatever. Yeah. So what he's saying here is, if I deflect it with my lightsaber and I get a surge result, I actually ping the bullet right back at you. As you would expect from a Jedi. Yeah. Really cool. He's also immune to Pierce. Now, Pierce is a keyword on some attacks. We don't know exactly what that means. I believe it's basically something that can get through armor. So it's a keyword that triggers off the back of other cards and upgrades, so makes perfect sense.
We also have upgrade slots.
Yep, on the left-hand side of the card, for example, with Luke, we have 2 Force abilities. We know they're Force abilities. I don't know what that little dude there is. Some kind of tech something? We don't have much info on the upgrade cards just yet, so I'm not going to say what that is for sure just yet. On the right-hand side of the card, we have the little green symbol, which refers to the hit point threshold of the card. We have the Courage, which we don't know about yet. We're not quite sure.
It's courageous.
It's very courageous, that's right. Yeah. It's probably some value to do with whether or not it runs from battle or something like that. We're not too sure just yet. More info on that as it comes out. We also have a little cube symbol next to these 2 values, and that refers to the type of dice it rolls in defense. Now, the thing about defense in Legion, unlike X-Wing where you have a set defense value, in Legion you roll 1 defense dice for every hit result you're about to potentially suffer. Say a horde of stormtroopers shoots Luke, and they get 4 hits. Luke will roll 4 red dice in response. And the colour of the dice weights how powerful that is. We'll get into the dice in a second, but that's how that works. Now, these 2 ratio values below those stats, something to something, and there's another gap below this. This could potentially have 2 different kinds. The top one refers to the surge conversion of the offense. The bottom one refers to the surge conversion of the defense. In the example of Luke, he is saying on his attacks, all of his surge results get freely converted to crit results. And on his defense, he gets no bonuses from his surge results. So if he rolled surges on his defense dice, nothing would happen. It would be treated like a blank. The red bars below this teach us how far a unit can move. In the case of Luke, he can move a total distance of 2. Along the bottom of the card, we have all the different kinds of attacks they can perform. In the example of Luke, we can attack with 2 different kinds of things. We have Anakin's lightsaber. The red symbol there with a cross in it means it's melee. You must be in base contact. You roll 6 black dice. Impact 2 and Pierce 2. Again, those are keywords that relate to different kinds of armors and upgrades. You also have Luke's DL-44 blaster pistol at range 1 to 2. He rolls 2 red dice, which is interesting. Red dice are more heavily weighted than black dice, so yeah.
It's a good blaster pistol.
Yeah, I guess so. Mind you, there's 6 black dice as opposed to 2 red dice. I guess that's probably better. We're not too sure on the odds of how this works in practice just yet. And that also has Pierce 2. Again, a keyword that relates to the kind of armor and upgrades it interacts with. Pretty straightforward. We also have Darth Vader, which I actually covered in the last video, so I won't spend too much time on him. He's obviously Imperial, costs 200 points, also a commander with 1 mini. His health stats read as 8 wounds he can take before he dies, which is nuts. Also has red dice in defense. So yeah, red dice is obviously meant to be the better kind of defense. I mean, Stormtroopers has it as well, which is kind of weird because you watch the movies and think, hey, this armor's kind of useless.
In the storylines, the armor's meant to be not terrible.
It's meant to be quite good, that's right. Vader only moves a distance of 1 every turn, so he's that slow, brooding guy that's just wrecking havoc. He's moving slowly, but he don't care.
Yeah, he's there to wreck faces.
Yeah.
And he's going to take his time doing it and enjoy it.
That's right. Imagine the scene from Rogue One walking down that hallway nice and slowly and just wrecking stuff. That's what's going on here. All his keywords are relating back to that. He has Deflect, just like Luke. Immunity to Pierce, just like Luke. He also has Master of the Force 1. During the end phase, you may ready one of your Force upgrades. So, obviously, Force upgrades are something that you spend and recharge every turn kind of thing, which makes sense. Makes sense.
Well, there's stuff like Force Choke.
Yeah, there's stuff like Force Choke and Saber Throw and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We've just seen a few spoiled images of those cards. We're not going to cover those until we get a bit more concrete information on them. He's also got Relentless. After you perform a move action, you may perform a free attack. Again, yeah, just moving, chopping, chopping. Interestingly, it's the same as Charge on Luke. After you perform a move action, you may perform a free melee attack action. Yeah. But Vader does not say melee, so if he has an equipped Force upgrade that gives him a range... like Saber Throw or Choke, that makes sense. Okay, so it's like a better version of Charge. Yeah. He's got the 1 simple attack, must be in base contact to swing his lightsaber, 6 red dice, impact 3, pierce 3. I'm guessing that's going to be one of, if not the most powerful attack in the game. That's pretty bonkers. Yep. Red dice are the best kind of dice in the game, so that makes perfect sense. So, yeah, those are our 2 commanders. So it gives you a bit of an idea about the flavour of what they're going for. I really like how we have keywords, like we have in Magic the Gathering. It's the kind of things that we can just learn and refer to later, but all the text is still there if you're a beginner and you're still learning. Okay, we also know the basic troopers for both factions. The Stormtroopers we'll start with, why not? Yep. On the Empire faction for 44 points. They have a little symbol in their rank that's just a little triangle. I'm guessing that's like, we're just lowly troopers kind of thing. Yep. And they come with 4 minis each. Stormtroopers are precise. When you spend a name token, reroll up to 1 additional dice. I know everyone's making the joke. Stormtroopers are precise. Yeah, but that's just how it is. Their upgrade bar consists of a lot of symbols we don't yet know. There's that same sort of squarish, techish symbol that we see on Luke Skywalker. There's a thermal detonator symbol. There's a unit symbol. I believe that refers to extra minis you can put on your squad.
Yep.
And the top one looks like a guy with a backpack running, I think. I don't know what that is. Yeah. We will see those when the upgrades cards come out, and that will all make sense. Their health stats read as 1 wound and 1 courage. Obviously, they're quite cowardly. And 1 wound should destroy 1 mini at a time. Their defense dice are red, though, which is quite cool. So that's representing that they've got good armor, I guess.
I suppose, you think about it, they're going to have better armor than the Rebel Trooper.
That's true, but unlike Luke and Vader, they don't have immunity to Pierce. So perhaps Pierce gets through the dice? Question mark? Not too sure. We'll find that out soon. They have a surge conversion on their attack. Every surge turns into a hit. Cool. Yep. Makes sense. And they've got a couple of attacks. Unarmed in base contact, they roll 1 black dice. And they also have the E11 blaster rifle at range 1 to 3. They roll 1 white dice, which I believe is meant to be the worst of the dice.
Yes.
So in base contact, they get a bit more of a boost. It makes sense. Obviously, it's harder to get into base contact. And they've got hand-to-hand training. They're soldiers. They should be a little bit better in hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
Also, they move at a distance of 2. Excellent. So this is meant to be like a more offensive version of the basic trooper. Sounds good. We also have the Rebel Troopers. Cost slightly less at 40 points. Comes with 4 minis. Again, is just the lowly trooper class. The upgrade bar is exactly the same. Again, we'll find out what those means when more information comes out. Their health stats are, again, just 1 piece of health per mini and 1 courage. And on defense, they have white dice. So their defense is slightly less good. But on their surge chart, they convert their defensive dice surges into evades, which is interesting. We'll learn a bit more about the stats behind that when we see the dice. Again, unarmed, base combat, they get 1 black dice. And range 1 to 3, they attack with black dice.
They also do have nimble as well.
Yep, a keyword.
Which is after defending, if you spent 1 or more dodge tokens, gain 1 dodge token.
Cool. So these guys are obviously meant to be a bit more defensive. Makes sense.
Yes.
Makes sense. So we have an offensive basic trooper and a defensive basic trooper. Sounds cool to me. In the core set, we also have a couple of vehicles, which is kind of cool. Let's again start with the Imperials for no apparent reason. It's an Imperial unit for 90 points. This one comes with 2 units. Their defensive stats are they have 3 pieces of health each. They defend with a white dice. And they have this cog instead of courage.
I reckon the cog might signify maybe if you get to a certain amount of hits, it might break down.
Yeah, like courage. Your units may behave in a certain way in certain situations, like if they need to flee from battle. The vehicles may break down at some point. It makes sense. Yeah. But it doesn't have a value next to it, which indicates that it's probably not relevant anyway. It just has 3 health. Yeah. This has an offense and a defense boost, which is kind of cool. Its offensive surge results get turned into hits. Its defensive surge results gets converted into misses, which is kind of cool. So it's very, very nasty from that point of view. Very good and tanky. Its keywords are cover 1 when defending against a ranged attack. Improve your cover by 1. Now, the cover keyword relates to your defense bonus. You automatically get 1 defense result when you're in cover. Makes perfect sense. Yeah. Speed of 1. While moving, ignore terrain that is higher than 1 or lower. When you activate, perform a compulsory move. It's a mosquito. Yeah. It's zipping around.
It's got to keep going.
It goes over barriers and all that kind of stuff. It makes perfect sense. And that's probably a way to counter the fact that it has quite good stats. Maybe they're saying, okay, well, it has good stats, but we're forcing you to use it. It might tactically be disadvantageous because you don't get to choose not to use it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Oh, the speeder bikes are always very quick and nimble, so...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, movement of 3. The only thing in this that actually moves at 3, so that'll be quite interesting. Has a couple of different weapons. EC-17 holdout blaster. I guess this is the dude pulling his blaster off his belt and just shooting. It has no ramifications in terms of the way you can aim it. Range 1 to 2, 2 black dice makes perfect sense. But the AX-20 blaster cannon is fixed to the front, meaning you can only shoot it forward, which makes sense. It also has impact 1, so it's meant to be a more powerful attack. Range 1 to 3, 1 black, 1 white, and 1 red dice.
It's kind of... It looks nice.
Very flavourful, having 3 different kinds of dice. I don't know what that means in terms of odds, but that'll be very interesting to see. On the Rebel faction, we have the AT-RT Walker. I believe this was a Clone Wars era Walker, which the Rebels repurposed. Now, that could indicate that Fantasy Flight don't intend to put Clone Wars era stuff in Legion, which they've done in the past with X-Wing, for example. They don't have Clone War era battles in that game either, but they put Clone Wars era ships and vehicles in that they want to appropriate into it because those happen to be quite cool.
I'd like to see some droidicas and things like that.
They're no match for droidicas. Yeah, it'd be cool, but at the same time, I think on the whole, we're mostly hyped for the Civil War era stuff.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And I feel like if they ever do bring it out, it's going to be a lot further down the line.
Yeah, for sure. They'll focus on this stuff first. In fact, we know now that their initial release is going to include stuff just from the original trilogy. That they're basically planning to fill that out first and then go, okay, where do we go from here? Okay, this guy cost 55 points on the Rebel faction. 1 miniature. Its defensive stats are 6 wounds and 4 cogs, whatever that means. So it does have some kind of condition where that comes into play and that could affect the way it functions in battle. It defends with white dice, just the same as the speeder bikes. And on offense, it turns surges into critical results. Ooh. So it's actually a bit more powerful, arguably, on offense. Yeah. Its keywords are armor. When defending, cancel all hit results. Yeah, okay. Ooh. That means only critical results get through?
Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe this is where Pierce comes into it. Maybe Pierce is a stat you add on top, which then goes through the armor.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Not too sure yet. Again, as more information comes out, we'll cover that. Climbing vehicle. You are treated as a trooper for the purpose of vertical movement. Okay. What this indicates is vehicles in general can't go up hills or they can't climb over terrain for purposes of vertical movement. So obviously troopers can go up a distance 1 cliff to quote-unquote climb, but most vehicles can't do that.
Well, because it's a walker.
Yes.
And it's a smaller walker.
That's right. It's more nimble. It can get over stuff. What's interesting about that is the speeder bike has that speeder ability, which means it can go straight over distance 1 climbing. So what this means is we need a bit more information on how climbing functions in this game, what kind of distance things can vertically travel to really nut out what this means. But it's still interesting to know that we have it for the time being. It also has expert climber. While clambering, do not roll defense dice or suffer wounds. Do not roll defense dice or suffer... So clambering must be... Maybe it's something to do with you have to get up a certain distance, which is a bit further than you could usually do it, but you're risking hurting yourself doing it. So it can still clamber, quote unquote, without hurting itself, which is very interesting. That's cool. Yeah. That's cool. I'm making guesses at this point. We don't know for sure what that means, but I'm guessing that's where it's coming from. This is meant to be a vehicle which is not the fastest. It only moves at 2 speed, but its ability to move around the battlefield is quite potent. It has grapple claws. It's got a melee attack.
Yeah, I just noticed that.
Oh, 3 red dice. That's powerful. I mean, not as good as Vader's lightsaber, but still.
Yeah.
Wow.
And impact 1, so
yeah, maybe
it's going to work.
Maybe like kicks it with its legs or something like that. Yeah, that'd be cool. It also has an A300 blaster rifle, range 1 to 3 with 2 white dice. It's not fixed to the front either. Yeah. So it's on a gimbal at the front of the walker. That's really cool. Yeah, it does more than just that basic I can only shoot forward thing that the speeder bike can do. I mean, obviously the whole thing with the speeder bike is it moves around the battlefield quite fast, so it can line up shots better. Yeah. But the ATRT is about... To me, it looks like it's more about tactics and positioning than aggression, which makes sense. It's on the Rebel faction. I'm guessing that's kind of what they're trying to go for.
Well, I feel like it would almost be like you slowly move up while shooting with the blaster rifle, and then if it ends up getting into the melee, it starts using the grappling claws.
Which is more powerful,
which
makes sense. Speaking of which, let's take a look at the dice. So basically, we are rolling D6s on defense and D8s on attack. But the good thing about these dice is they don't just have basic numeric values, they have result values. They're making a real point of making this game pretty straightforward. You don't have to bury your face in a rule book like you do with something like 40k or Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I know that pain all too much. So basically, you roll the dice and you see exactly the kind of results you can get. The only thing that's complicated is whether or not you convert surges, blah, 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 and those kind of keywords. But that's all on the cards in front of you. Yeah. It's all on the card. All the information is up front. So we have 2 defense dice, one white, one red. The red one is better. Basically, on that red dice, 3 of the 6 results are blocks, and 1 of them is a surge.
While with the white one of them is a block, and 1 of them is a surge, and the rest are all blank.
Which is interesting if you think about how it affects the results. Trooper that's defending with a white dice, if it has a free surge conversion, it's a 1 in 3 chance of blocking. Basically, the surge is a way of messing with the kind of results you can get. They could have just had 4 different kinds of dice, but no. Let's just have surge results and narrow it down to only 2 dice. So you either have this kind of dice with or without surges, or this kind of dice with or without surges. Yeah. It means you basically have 1 result helps you, 2 results helps you, 3 result helps you, or 4 results help you. Yeah. Depending on which kind of dice they roll and whether or not they convert surge. That's nice.
I like it.
It's a nice simplified way of doing it, and I really like that. You can't defend with something that's going to give you better than 3/4 odds, but that seems fine to me. Like Jedi and stuff tend to have more health anyway, so if they do get hit, well, that's all right. You just deal with it. Yeah. The wound threshold saves them.
Indeed.
And it's the same thing with the offense dice, except we also have a black offensive dice to represent kind of a medium between the white and the red. The white's the worst, has 1 hit result, 1 crit result, and 1 surge result.
The black one has 3 hits, 1 crit, and 1 surge.
And the red has 5 hits, 1 crit, and 1 surge. The red dice is nasty.
So you're nearly always going to hit with a red die.
So anything that rolls red dice with a surge conversion is pretty nasty. I mean, Vader rolls 6 red dice off his attack, but Luke rolls 2 red dice off his blaster attack and gets a free critical result as a surge on all his attacks.
Yeah, so he goes from...
Wow, his blaster's nasty.
Yeah.
That's really nasty. 7 out of the 8 dice results will do damage. 2 of them will do criticals.
Yep.
There's a 1 in 4 chance of getting a critical. There's a 5 in 8 chance of hitting apart from that. That's nasty. That's really nasty.
It's a good blaster.
It is indeed. I mean, at the end of the day, it's only 2 dice, and Vader's attack is 6 dice. And that's where the whole thing comes from. Also, there's the factor of the impact and the pierce keywords, which also change the kind of hits you get, change the kind of damage you do to your opponent. So there's more going on to it just in terms of raw dice and surge results. It's actually quite complex when you get down to it, but pretty simple on the surface when you're trying to execute it, which I quite like. They've integrated a lot of different kind of stats together to make very complex types of attacks and damage.
Yeah.
Whilst keeping it a very relatively simple game, which I quite like. I mean, just based on this information we can see in front of you, this is already, in my opinion, way simpler than 40k or Lord of the Rings or anything Games Workshop made.
Oh, so much. Oh, so much.
Don't get me wrong, I have a lot of respect for those games, and the miniatures are fantastic. The lore is insane. But at the end of the day, the time investment that goes into those games is pretty massive, and a relatively casual gamer like me that plays other tabletop games doesn't really have the energy or time to invest in that. When you buy anything for Legion, whether it be the core set or the expansions that will come out, you get all the rules cards with them.
Yeah.
You get all the information you need. You get upgrades. I mean, sure, if you need to mix and match upgrades like you do in X-Wing, you might need to get different expansions. I think that's pretty much a given. They're going to do that.
Definitely.
They're going to add in more upgrades later on with newer expansions that relate to the older units and try and catch them up in terms of power. But overall, it's quite a good, simple system. It's the same system they use in X-Wing. It's the same system they use in Armada, and it works.
Yep.
It's one of the reasons I love X-Wing so much, because of the upgrade cards. All the stuff's there in front of you, and it's just nice and simple. So just in relation to the upgrade cards, we're not going to go through those today because we have only patchy bits of information revealed. So hopefully as more of these upgrade cards come out, we'll learn a bit more about what these keywords mean. But for the time being, let's focus on the other elements about what we get in the core set. So apart from that, we know for the time being what we're getting in the core set. Apart from all the template rules and tokens, all that kind of stuff, the miniatures we're getting is one Luke Skywalker, one Darth Vader, a whole bunch of Rebel Troopers, I believe enough to make up 2 units, and same with Stormtroopers.
And some specialty versions of those units.
That's right, a couple with Gatling guns or something. We'll have that revealed to us when the upgrade cards come out and that's all properly spoiled. So that's just going to basically give your Rebel Troopers or your Stormtroopers a different kind of attack on top of their regular blaster rifles. Apart from that, we have the Scout Bikes and we have the AT-RT Walkers on the Rebellion. And off FFG's website, it retails for $90 US, which seems like a good price. Probably here in Australia, I'm guessing around maybe $140, $150. Yep, seems pretty good. Seems about right for something like this. You buy a starter set for anything by Games Workshop, you're spending about that same amount of price for the same amount of minis, roughly. We don't know the quality of the plastic they're using, but from the pictures we can see, it looks fantastic. It looks like it's definitely better than Imperial Assault. Don't know if it's like Games Workshop level of quality, but honestly, I prefer my minis just being up to a certain quality and no better, because we don't need things getting astronomically expensive.
Indeed.
At the end of the day, it's about playing the game, not having great models. One last thing we want to look through today. We don't have all the details on how these work yet, but there are 3 different kind of cards that make up the scenario that you're fighting on. We have cards that represent the mission objectives you're trying to do, cards that represent the kind of deployment that you put your troops into, and cards that represent a condition the battlefield is currently in, whether that be limited visibility or more reinforcements or stuff like that. So basically, any combination of these 3 cards makes up the scenario you're in, which is a cool way of doing it. You have lots of combinations right off the bat. You only have a small handful of each, but that's all you need to have potentially like hundreds of different scenarios.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know if you get to choose these before your game or whether they get dealt randomly. I hope they get dealt randomly.
Oh, randomly
I think
would be better.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. I mean, I guess if you're playing casual games, I'm like, oh, I just want to try this deployment today. I'm like, yeah, cool, whatever. But in a games tournament, you basically want to make squads that can adapt to any one of these situations. So from that point of view, it would be better to have randomized drawings of these cards. That'd be really cool. I'd really, really enjoy that. The idea is you don't get to have that standard formation that you always use. You must always think on your feet.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Kind of like in X-Wing, how you got to deploy before and after your opponent and kind of try and counter them as best you can. Except it's the same for both. We don't know how units deploy, what order they deploy in. Again, that's another detail we'll see later on. But for the time being, I love the look of this mechanic. It just adds a bit more interest and intrigue to the game, having that random element right out of the gate. We know the game is played on a 6 by 3 foot board, so having a look at these deployment cards, it looks like you're using the range rulers to kind of dictate the zones where your units can be deployed. Indeed, the one on the left hand of this picture I'm looking at right here looks like an X-Wing deployment. How you have either side of the board and it's just within those boundaries. But I like the one in the middle. How you're going in the corners and you have to kind of pick the certain bits of cover that fit into those corners and that kind of stuff.
That's my favourite looking one as well.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the mission cards is we know for the time being that everything is based around trying to defeat a certain objective. It's not just about murdering your entire opponent's squad, which is good because that would usually take longer. It's about trying to get objectives done, and the idea is you could just sit behind cover and shell your opponent all day long, but you wouldn't win a game doing that. Yeah. It forces your hand. It forces you to get your units out there and complete objectives. So we have relatively short games and should have a relatively high amount of action.
I agree.
Which is what you want. I love the way they've done this. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, it just makes so much sense.
It does.
And it's so much nice to have things on a card rather than in a book.
Yep. Again, we're not burying our face in a book. We have a relatively fast, exciting game. This is a lot of things that a lot of tabletop players have been really wanting for a long time. I get the impression that FFG really took their time with this and thought, you know what? We want to make this. We've clearly got the market for it. Let's take our time and get it right.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for that. So yeah, that just about covers everything up to date with what we know about Legion. Justin, any final thoughts on this game?
I want to play this, but at the same time, I'm a terrible painter.
You're a terrible painter.
This is what annoys me, because I want to play this game, but I know that if I start this, I'm going to have to paint things.
I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because that's another point I wanted to make. FFG have actually commissioned a series of painting videos by... Oh god, this is terrible. I can't remember his name. I'll put him up on the screen now. A really good miniature painter on YouTube who does this kind of stuff all the time, and they've already commissioned him. He's actually started his tutorial on Luke Skywalker. And the idea is all of the tutorials for the stuff that comes in the core set will be on YouTube before the core set comes out. And it's pretty straightforward techniques, nothing too crazy.
Yeah, but...
You just don't want to do it, do you?
I really don't.
Hey, I'll paint your minis. I don't mind.
Okay, cool.
Yep, okay, you're happy again.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, we will continue to keep you posted on this game. We're both really hyped for it. And yeah, it sounds like you guys are too. Yeah. So anyway, I will catch you in the next video and see you later.
Bye.